Welcome, this is Jim, host of the Faith Influencer podcast, where we're going to dive into discussions on faith's role in everyday life, from navigating blended families to overcoming challenges. I'm a husband, a father, a Bible teacher, an advocate for applying faith to everyday life. So tune in as I share personal stories, valuable insights, and practical wisdom. Don't marry psycho woman. Anyways, that was the advice given to me by a group of ladies. I'm going to tell you that story in a minute. I'm talking to men today. And by the way, this is Jim Cunningham with Faith Influencer. Last time we spoke to women, but today I'm talking to guys. And this is an easy one for me because I am one. And so, men, I want you to get ready to jot down some ideas. And in the end, I'm going to give you a biblical prescription about remarrying. Okay, so that's where we're headed. Did you know that once a man is married, for the rest of his life, he is hardly ever unmarried? Now, that's what statistics tell us. As a matter of fact, they also tell us that when it comes to blended families, which is what we're talking about, that men remarry way faster than women do. So let's talk a little bit about some of the statistics revolving around this idea that men marry faster and why. And then let's get some advice from some women in my life group. And then let's see what God says about it as well from a couple of passages of Scripture. And here we go. 1, men, they tell us that we struggle more with remarriage because there are very few resources ever written or put out there for men. That's what they tell us. As a matter of fact, I haven't personally researched this, but they say that almost all of the material on divorce and remarriage and blended families are aimed at women, not men. So I don't know. That's interesting, but now that's not an excuse because we have this podcast. 2, that to discover that men are, I hate to say this, but this is the word, seem to be more needy and remarry quicker because of that is sort of disheartening. If that's true, I don't want to admit it. Maybe it is true, but here's how they prove that. I don't know where they come up with this research, but they tell us that unmarried men who were married and divorced and remain unmarried are twice as likely to commit suicide as married men. That's what they tell us. They tell us that once someone is over 45 years old and they go through a divorce, that men are twice as likely to remarry than women are. Women remain unmarried, sometimes after 45 forever, oftentimes for years, but not men. Men will remarry or re-enter a relationship within months after a divorce. That's what guys do. They go on and tell us, here are some other statistics, they go on and tell us that men are just more emotionally reliant on a partner. That's what they say. As a matter of fact, statistics go on and say that men who are divorced and remain divorced are unhealthier than married men. And then they tell us that divorced men who do not remarry, who remain divorced, have more heart trouble. I don't know about all of that, but it sounds like that men have lots of excuses why they want to jump into another relationship. So we're going to talk about how to handle that, because the truth is a lot of blended families don't make it because they should have never been blended. So that's what we're going to deal with. So how can you know, sir, talking to you, how can you know? Well, let's take the advice from a group of ladies. So here's what happened. So I have a life group, and we're sitting down with the life group every other week, and they all gather recently, and none of the men came. They were all out of town. Only the wives showed up. So it was me and the wives. Literally, I was the only guy there. So I said, well, let's shift and have a discussion, ladies. I want to ask you a question. And here's my question. What would be your advice to men who have been married and are going to remarry? That's how I phrase the question. So give me some ideas and some advice about finding that woman. Their response was surprising. Now, just so you don't send me something tacky, I want to say this is what the ladies said, not me. This is their advice. Here's what they said. First of all, they said, this guy needs to avoid psycho woman. That's what was said. I didn't say it. They said it. Avoid psycho woman. They went on and explained, because that was my question, what do you mean marry psycho woman? And this is what they all admitted to, that in these circumstances, often a woman who's looking to remarry herself, many of them can be manipulative. I'm like, describe that to me. Well, they were a little more kind and said, it's not always consciously being a manipulator. Sometimes it's even subconscious. Because oftentimes, what a woman will do, this is what they told me, what do you think? This is what they said, that oftentimes in remarrying, blending a family, that women are okay with settling, because this is what they're really looking for. It's not like the first time and you're marrying this guy and you're very interested in how he looks and you're very interested in all of these. Not so much this time, the ladies told me. This time, it's more about security. This time, there's financial security issues. This time, they're looking for a father figure. And one of the ladies said, not so much a father figure, but a father role. And so they're going to settle because they're looking for these things. I want to say to you, I understand that. I understand that there is psycho women out there. I understand that there is the manipulation that goes on out there. I understand that sometimes maybe it's, quote, innocent and it's a subconscious thing, looking for this security and someone to plug into these roles for our family. But I also want to say that's not the basis of a good marriage. What's going to happen is that is going to blow up eventually. So let's keep going. Guys, let me address some things to you. First of all, if you think you're going to find someone to plug into your happiness meter so that it will go up and you will experience those emotions again, wrong reason to look for a woman. That's never in any marriage your partner's role to be plugged in to make you happy. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say that if that's you, you need to go through some counseling. We'll talk about that again in a second. You need to go through some counseling to deal with why you are chasing that. So it's never someone's job to make you happy. I want you to consider why you are unhappy by yourself. I want you to know the difference between happiness and contentment. Contentment is not based on being married or unmarried. It's based on your relationship with the Lord. I want you to consider why you're not content and you're looking for someone to make you happy. Here's the next thing. Guys have said to me, and I asked the ladies about this the other night, and they agreed. Guys will say to me, well, I'm going to make sure I marry the right person because we're going to spend a lot of time dating. I hate to say the words that come to my mind right now, other than that's a dumb idea, because here's why. It's like looking for someone's personality on Facebook. It's like trying to understand someone's values based on what they put on social media. No one ever puts their life on social media. They just put the good stuff on there. You're never going to discover who they are there. Same way with dating. No one ever shows up with their bad, unhealthy self in a dating relationship. No one's ever going to lay all of that out. It's not a good predictor. So don't tell me that you're going to find the right person because you're going to date for a long time. Everyone gets along dating. That's not a good predictor. So guys, can I just say this and be honest? Don't be so needy. As a matter of fact, some of you don't need to remarry. You need to move in with your mother. That's what some of you need to do, because here's what some of you are doing. You're saying, well, I need to be validated. I want to say, bless your heart. Some say, well, I feel less than. Or some of you, and you're not going to say this out loud, I know, but some of you are going to say, I need to be taken care of. Again, move in with your mother. That's not the good foundation for marriage. As a matter of fact, let's look at a couple of things. There's this passage in the book of Ephesians, and it gives some instructions to guys. And so guys, those of you who are looking for what someone can give you is the opposite of how God lays out your role as a husband. As a matter of fact, he says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church. And then notice what it says, and gave himself for her. That's the role. It's not who can take care of you or who can do something for you. It's about giving yourself to someone. It's about fulfilling that God-given role. So let's not glorify like our society does. Sometimes in a patriarchal society that we live in, it's almost glorified that you marry someone to take care of you. And there are plenty of women who will jump in and baby you, but that's not a God-given marriage. Let's take it the next step. This is what I want you to do. And then I'm going to give you a biblical prescription. I want you guys, before you remarry, I want you to identify her values. That's what I want you to do. I want you to identify her values. How will you do that? You may not be able to. That's why I say every time you've got to go to counseling before you remarry. And not just any kind of counseling. You've got to go to a Christian counselor who knows God's plan for marriage. You've got to sit down with that guy. And you know what that guy's going to do or that lady's going to do? They're going to know how to ask questions, because sometimes guys are so blinded because they're so needy and they want to remarry that they overlook all of the red flags that she's putting off. Sometimes guys can't read between the lines. So I'm going to say we need help with that. We need help from a professional counselor who asks the questions and uncovers. That doesn't mean that that person is the wrong person who maybe has some red flags. It just means that it's not time to get in a serious relationship until those things are dealt with. Maybe some extended counseling for that person to deal with some hurts and hang-ups. So counseling is very important. But also listening. You say, oh, I'm a good listener. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about listening to what they're not saying. I'll give you an example. So you do go on this date. And as you get to know each other, she's describing her past relationship, because that's what happens on a date when people who have been married before, they talk about their previous relationship. I would be real curious how she describes that past relationship. What I'm looking for in those scenarios, is it always someone else's fault? Did they do everything wrong? Were they the victim of all that this person laid out on top of them? Were they the weight and the reason why there was a divorce? Is it all their fault? Well, we know better than that. It's never all someone's fault. So listen to how they describe those relationships. I mean, even listen to how they describe their relationship with their family and with their parents and with her father and all of those things. Those are the in-between the line types of things that I want you to listen to. And then, now catch this, then if I'm you, I want to hear her describe her role in the family. I want to hear her describe how she sees her position in this family you're thinking about blending. Here's why I say that. Oftentimes, when a lady has been through divorce and been hurt, and she carries that hurt, she has these walls up that she doesn't care what happens from here on. She's going to be independent of anyone else. Not interdependent, independent. I'm never going to allow someone to get that close to me and hurt me again. That's an issue. Or I'm never again going to give myself to a man because that's too much vulnerability and I can't experience that again. Listen, you can't marry her. At least like that. If that's her mindset, if that's her understanding of her role, it's not going to work. That's not the kind of marriage you're looking for. There must be this emotional involvement. There must be this foundation of the God-given roles. Now, guys, let me give you one last thing. Here it is. This is the prescription. And as a matter of fact, this would be for any marriage, but especially for remarriage. Listen to what the Bible says in Proverbs 18:22. This is the bottom line. If you come to me and say, listen, I'm a divorced, I'm really want to be remarried, I really want another relationship, how do I find the right person? Great question. How do I find the person? How do I not overlook all the red flags? How do I enter into the correct relationship that's forever? How do I find this person who loves the Lord and who has my values? How do I find the right person? I'm so glad you asked, because here's the answer. The passage says, he who finds a wife, and I'm sorry for the King James language, I kind of like it, finds a good thing. Now, I say that humorously because no woman likes to be called a thing. That's the King James. So the NIV says, who finds a wife finds what is good. That's a different translation. And receives, listen guys, and receives favor from the Lord. But I want to explain this verse to you. Because if you don't dig into this passage, you have the wrong idea. It says, he who finds a wife finds what is good. So a wife is good. That's God's plan. But when it says he who finds a wife, doesn't mean that you're out looking. That's not what this word means. It doesn't mean that you're searching for the right wife. That's a false interpretation. That's what some of you are doing. That's what some of you have done over and over and over, and why you've been in and out of relationships, because you're out trying to find her. You'll never find her. Here's God's prescription. That word find in the Hebrew, which is the Old Testament, literally means this. It means you live your life for the Lord, you do what you do, and God will bring the right person across your path. You let God bring that right person. You're not out trying to identify them. You're just out living your life, loving on your kids. You're going to work. You're serving the Lord. You're involved in all of those things, and watch what God does. God will bring that person across your path. Let God do it. So don't go find this person who you think makes you happy because you had a fun date. Let God introduce the right person. The two of you get into counseling and begin to heal some of those hurts and see what God does to that relationship. So guys, thanks for joining me today. We look forward to next time. This is Jim Cunningham with Faith Influencer.